GMGM. Welcome, Club CPG, and this one's live on the Twitterverse. We are here today, and we're going to do some great Genius Call updates. First, some Club CPG housekeeping notes. Tomorrow, the interview that we had last week with Kat Cole will be dropping in on our podcast. So if you can, you should subscribe to Crypto Podcast Goods wherever you listen to your podcasts. We also had a big announcement today in the Builders Club. We announced our Builders Club Community Choice Award. We have prizes totaling $25K. And so if you're a builder and you're in that club, please follow that tweet and follow that Telegram message so that we can get you going. The submitting for pitches is due by November 5th, and there's a whole bunch of details in the Telegram thread, so please check that out. We also just want to give a quick plug about Art Basel. It's right around the corner. We are converging on Miami, and we'll host our event on December 1st, so save the date for that. And now I would like to dive right in to our guest, a quick preamble. So we're very fortunate to have a very authentic voice on the Twitterverse for Web3 and NFT Twitter. NFT God has been tweeting out all sorts of great nuggets of goodness. We're going to dive into some of his history today. He's got a newsletter. He's got over 55,000 followers, and we're really having a great time setting this up, and we're thankful to have him here today. So NFT God, Alex, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going well, my man. Good to be here, Mikey.
Oh, we really appreciate you being here. I have to say, I got to give a shout out to Janet because she does a ton of the work behind the scenes, doing a bunch of research, providing a bunch of the questions. And I just spent the past couple days, and specifically the past couple hours, just diving through your Twitter. And I have to say, I love it all. And we're going to dive into a couple of different pieces here. But to start, we're going to talk about your origin story. So I really want to hear how you got into the current state of affairs and how you grew up and what you've been up to get to this point.
Yeah, man, I've been in technology my entire life. So I studied computer science, was a software developer, got into tech consulting. Now I manage a team of tech consultants. And about a year and a half ago, I stumbled across an article for Sandbox, which is one of the metaverses. And I was blown away. I didn't hear about crypto up to that point. And I was blown away by this concept that you can, be in this Minecraft type land, build things, own it, sell it, buy, and you own all the assets in the game. And that really is kind of what red pilled me into NFTs. And from there, I bought a bunch of Sandbox land. I bought a bunch of sand. I held it. I wish I would have really leaned in at that point. This was March of 2021. Come December 2021, that's when I started looking around more, looking at other projects, and I decided to dive in fully. And I picked up my Mutant Ape. I started my Twitter account. I started a blog. I started a newsletter. I tried to think of, okay, what was the name that would get people's heads to turn and want to click on my name. NFT God was the first idea I came up with. I checked on Twitter. It was available. Got the handle. I bought the domain nftgod.gives. And I've been writing from there. And, before this, I was creating content in the traditional finance space as kind of a hobby. Before that, I was creating content in the sports space as a hobby. I like writing. And, I realized as I was looking around the NFT space, a lot of the voices, a lot of the influencers and the thought leaders were more memes and things like that. And I think those are critical. I think those are important to have for this culture. But there wasn't really anyone giving value and tips in trying to spread information. And so I realized quickly, there was a gap in the market and I wanted to fill that gap. So last December, started tweeting, started sending out newsletters and just been, creating content and growing since.
So there's a couple of things that I'd love to touch on there. I have this same approach. I love degens when I meet them and how they're, trading and flipping, and I am not good at it. And I respect it, but that's not the part of the world I want to play in Web3. And it's similar, I think, in your, the memes are hilarious or serve a function, but some of them kind of are if you're a shit poster, you're sort of like hiding behind that snark. And I don't know that everybody wants to have that be their like authentic self. And you seem to have found this voice that is really extremely authentic. And I think that it's great. I think that there's a couple things that you mentioned there about like trends, and you're sort of, it's almost like you're bucking this trend of by being authentic. What do you think inspires you to kind of be motivated in that way? Because the content you put out has lots of like very practical, pragmatic tips. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, well, one thing was I noticed when I was in the traditional finance content space, all the influencers, all they did was just give information. They got charts, different stock charts, and said, "Hey, I noticed this trend." They'd read 10K reports and give information on that. And I didn't see much of that kind of in the NFT space. So, I wanted to be unique in that way. And then from an authentic voice perspective, it took a while to find my voice. I wanted to help. It's the number one thing, that satisfies me in my life, is helping others and knowing my information is made changes and improvements in other people's lives. So, I was creating content on NFT God with under a couple thousand followers for 6 months. It took me from December to June of this year. I was under 5K the entire time. And, I was experimenting with different content, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work, trying different tweets and threads and all that. And, it was the content where I was sharing knowledge and sharing things I was learning that was performing the best. And, so I started leaning super hard into that. And, really my strategy has been from the beginning, I try to learn as much as I can. And then I share what I learn. I read as many books as I can. I experiment, I trade, whatever it is. And then I just share it all out. I don't hold anything back. I share out what's working for me from a growth perspective, trading perspective, life perspective. And then I share it with others, and it's just what's worked well.
Fantastic. I mean, there's a saying, when I worked at Meta, they had these red letter posters like "Be bold and move fast." And there was a facetious one that I think resonates really well in Web3, and it's "Every day feels like a week." And so in this like torrent of Twitter spaces and tweets that come at you, what have you found is like the most exciting trend in that span? Because I think we could look back 6 months and the trends are probably very different. So what's been the evolution of trends that you've kind of latched onto from that growth period of 1,000 to now?
It's specifically in the NFT space.
In NFT Twitter, yeah, or in NFT.
Yeah, I think the space is shifting. When I started, something that really bugged me was engagement farming was rampant. It was like 99% of content on NFT Twitter was engagement farming. Things like retweet and tag 3 friends, like this tweet, and I just might change your life. Tweets that take a lot of value but give very little. And that was the trend. That's what worked, unfortunately. And, I wanted to buck that trend and do something different. And so I think over the last several months since the bear market started, that trend is slowly starting to fade. And actually giving value is the new trend, whether it's giving value through more humor or things like that, or giving value of mixing it up with community. So founders in projects going into spaces, getting in the trenches with their holders, things like that, just getting part of their community. I think more of the authenticity is becoming the trend, and people are looking down upon the engagement farming now that money isn't flowing like crazy through the space. I think the space is maturing. I think all the pain a lot of people have felt over the last several months is causing people to shift and change. And I think a higher bar and a higher standard for quality when it comes to content is starting to happen in the space.
So for Club CPG, we're very proud of the Builders Club that we formed in the incubator. And so what are some of the tactics or trends that you would say, like, so you have a personal brand and you're coming through as an individual. What have you seen for projects that, again, the engagement farming is sort of on the decline, thankfully, what are some things apart from the authenticity that you would look for a brand to do as we're like looking for these builders to reap some knowledge here?
Yeah, it seems that the projects that are succeeding in the bear market are being led by people that truly understand Web3 culture. And, so you look at some of the projects that have succeeded in the bear market. You look at like a Utes, for instance, led by Frank. That succeeded incredibly in the bear market because he was going on every Twitter space every day. He was mixing it up with people in the community. He was doing AMAs in the Discord every day. And he truly seemed like he understood the Web3 culture. And that's what people are looking for, are people who understand Web3 culture. So if you're looking to, have a project succeed, the space is not really a product-driven space just yet. It's an attention-driven space. You can create an absolutely fantastic Web3 product, and it still won't sell because you don't have attention on it. But you can create kind of a crap product, and if you have the grasp of the Web3 culture, you can still sell it out. Utes doesn't have any utility announced yet, and it's still generated millions of dollars because Frank demonstrated his ability to understand the culture. And now, on the other hand, you look at a project like Doodles, who is an incredibly well-run company. They have a board, they have executives, they have celebrities. They're truly building a product. The issue is they went a month without tweeting, and they demonstrated a lack of understanding Web3 culture, and that really hurt their project. So if I was to make a recommendation to builders out there, I'd say, really understand Web3 culture, get ingrained into it, and that's how you're going to roll out your product to larger masses.
Awesome. Thanks. How do you think the bear has affected your engagement? Like, what are you seeing different from, say, earlier this year to now?
Honestly, I really started taking off in the bear market. So I've just been slowly growing the entire time. One thing I notice is a lot of my content where I call out the negatives of the old way of doing things works really well. So when I call out the engagement farming from past, or when I call out the shady tactics that some projects might deploy, that actually performs really well. And what that tells me is, one, people are kind of quietly angry at the way things were ran in the previous market. And two, there's just not enough people calling it out just yet. So to kind of go back to a point you were talking about earlier, people want authenticity. And I haven't been afraid to kind of call out some of the weird things that have been going on in the space over the past 10 months. And so that's been working well for me. That's been picking up the last several months in the bear market. But at the end of the day, the content that works best for me doesn't have any specific theme. I tweeted yesterday a guide on how to get started in programming. It's one of my top 5 performing tweets ever. My number 1 performing tweet was like my favorite tools and NFTs. It is a vast array of types of content. The one thing that's consistent across all of them is the content that gives the most value performs the best.
100%. In going through your Twitter feed a couple times and more recently, and I went through and liked a ton of things. The one for computer science really hit home because I believe there are lots of folks who, if you just have an internet connection, you can get a lot of knowledge. And I think it's great that you called that out. Like, yeah, you don't need to go get a CS degree. You can just learn it yourself. With respect to Twitter and how much time you spend on it, you have a day job. You're very successful there. You have some tweets that are really interesting about specific tactics of like how you set up building that discipline of tweeting. I know for me, there's like a love-hate relationship with Twitter often. And part of it is like you can get stuck in that doom scroll. How do you avoid that? And what is sort of your routine that others can like, it's summarized in a tweet here, but I would love for you to just articulate it.
Yeah, I was forced into having to get disciplined when it came to Twitter because I do have a very busy day job that I enjoy very much. I've been working hard at my career to build it to this point. And so, that's my number one priority. So I was forced to get discipline around Twitter and make sure, my days aren't sucked into it. And so for me, I've had the same routine and process for the last 10 or 11 months I've been tweeting, which is, I spend about a half hour a night ideating. So just dumping ideas into a notepad. I use Notion. That's my favorite note-taking app on my computer. And I just dump as many ideas as I can into it for that half hour. And then I just edit it down for a couple minutes. I take those ideas, I get rid of the fluff. I try to make the writing as powerful as possible. And then I just queue tweets. So I got a tool I use called Hype Fury, which is like a tweet scheduling tool. It's great. I just schedule the tweets into there. My routine's pretty straightforward. Again, it's been the same since December 28th, 2021. And that's been, I do 2 tweets a day. I do 2 threads a week, and I do 1 newsletter a week. And when I get the spare time, I create the content. I schedule it for whenever I want to send it out. I just put it in my queue, and then my tools just tweet it out. I have my next 14 days of tweets put out already because I've just been working on it, continuously. And what that allows me to do is I don't need to live on Twitter. Back when I started, I didn't use scheduling. And every time I tweeted, I had to do it live, right? I had to come up with ideas live and send it out. And 1, that just makes it so your ideas aren't as ironed out. And 2, it means you have to constantly be thinking about Twitter. And I'd rather compartmentalize that, have my half hour a night. I ideate, create content, schedule it out, and then not have to think about it, until the next time I ideate. So it's all about discipline. It's all about routines. I tweet about routines and habits a lot. I think discipline equals freedom. And the more disciplined you are, the more freedom you'll have. And so by having this discipline around content creation, it's made it a lot easier for me to balance, my day job, which takes up 12 plus hours of my day, and then all the things I'm doing with content creation.
The discipline key component is crucial. I think it's an undervalued skill and an undervalued trait in folks. I appreciate it. For one, I mean, my background is from the Army, and discipline is kind of our thing. Shifting gears slightly, Twitter Spaces, like we're not on a Twitter Space right now. It's just you and I. We're live streaming to Twitter, which I hope is a trend that actually picks up, because I think it actually gives us a bit more flexibility for a lot of things, a lot of reasons. But what's your take on Twitter Spaces and how to run them effectively, and how that fits into your overall Twitter strategy going back to December?
Yeah, I love Twitter Spaces. I think it's an excellent growth strategy. I think a large part of my growth from 0 to 50K was Twitter Spaces. And I tweet about it a lot. If you're trying to grow, if you're under that 10K follower, you want to be leveraging Twitter Spaces immensely. You want to be speaking on a space every day. It helps you in so many ways. It's improving your communication skills. It's improving your public speaking. It's improving your sales skills, and it's improving your growth. Right? You go on there on a Twitter space, you share your opinion. People who agree with your opinion are going to follow you. And now you're building a high quality audience. And I talk about it a little bit. There's a huge difference between a high quality audience and a low quality audience. Low quality audiences are built through engagement farming, other tactics like that, botting, whatever it is. And low quality audiences are the equivalent of having no audience at all. They're not going to engage with you. They're not going to buy your ideas. They're not going to buy into your vision and your voice. It's pretty useless, but you get your vanity metrics. A high quality audience is an audience of people that believe in your vision, that agree with the things you've said on spaces, and, share the same values. And that's the type of audience that's going to, be a part of everything you produce, read everything you produce, engage with everything you produce. If you decide to sell a product one day, they're going to be the ones buying your product. They're going to be your evangelists to other people. And so, I really focus on different ways to build high quality audiences. And Twitter Spaces are one of those examples of ways to really build a high quality audience if you go on it and really leverage the opportunity.
And so I have a bunch of opinions about audio in particular. I feel like a lot of the Twitter spaces being live, there's a great ephemerality to it, but it's also the quality is very hit or miss depending on who's in the space with you and what the topic is. I think they're getting better, but I feel like the evolution of the tool set is still pretty early. And I think that the data kind of shows that. What are the things that you would give? What is the advice that you would give somebody for trying to like dive in and have that nerve kind of edged off, like taken away? How did you prepare to get into them? Did you just dive in feet first, or like what was your mindset for hitting that?
There's no other way to do it. You just do it cold turkey. I was very nervous doing my first Twitter Spaces. I think I went on my first stage back in February of this year. It was a stage that had over 1,000 people in the audience. I was nervous as hell. My voice was shaky. I did it again a day later. Nervous as hell. Voice is shaky. I did it again a day later. Maybe after 10 times of doing it, did I finally start to feel comfortable? There's no other ways to conquer your fear other than just conquering it. And you do that through repetitions. Twitter Spaces is one of those things where it's such an incredible tool when it comes to improving a lot of different skill sets very easily. Before it was very difficult to get the practice of talking in front of a lot of people. You need to do like a Toastmasters. Here you can just go on your phone while you're sitting on your couch, search for a space, request to speak, and now you're speaking in front of hundreds of people. And that's incredibly valuable practice for your different skill sets. So there's no other way to do it other than just doing it and trying not to overthink it. And then eventually that voice in the back of your head that says, this is scary, you're screwing up, will go away and fade.
Just jump right in. So we've covered short form with Twitter. We've covered audio with Twitter. But talk about your newsletter and how that dovetails into the strategy that you formed and kind of give us the roots of it. I think you have a Substack now. You started with something that was a little different, but give us kind of that history and like, how does that fit into the routine? Because now you've got, all right, you take time for writing tweets, you take time to join spaces, and then you take time for long form. Like, what's the overlap there? And, what's the overlap and how did you get into like knowing you wanted to write this newsletter and any other details you want to share?
Yeah. So I started the newsletter when I started my Twitter account. So I started the newsletter when I had 0 followers. At that time, I was actually sending out a newsletter a day. So for the first few months, I sent out a newsletter every single day. It took me like an hour and a half. I was up till 2 a.m. some nights because I had to do work. I had to do this, whatever it was. And then I made sure I wrote the newsletter and I made sure I stayed disciplined. And the reason I did it is honestly, I just really like long form writing. And I realized there was nobody else in the space doing long form writing. And so again, I saw a gap in the market and I wanted to fill that gap. And, as it evolved, my motivations with the newsletter have evolved. Right now, my newsletter is my place for my hardcore fans, right? Like if someone's willing to trust me and subscribe to my newsletter and give me their email address, those are my hardcore fans. And I want to be able to build a more personal connection with them. And so I only do the newsletter once a week now, but I make it a lot longer. I try to add a lot more personal value stuff to it. And I just try to build a closer relationship with my fans through there. I also strongly believe that, if you're looking to build a platform, you need to be on multiple platforms. So if you're only on Twitter, the Twitter algorithm controls you. If they decide to change the algorithm and for some reason your content is not favored by the algorithm, your platform disappears. But if you have something like a newsletter, for instance, you control your platform, you control your email list. There's no algorithm that's taking that away. And so I wanted to have that secondary platform for what I was doing that an algorithm couldn't destroy. And so, I ended up being very lucky that I started this when, I built my account, because I don't believe I'd have the growth right now that I have if I started it recently. I'm at, close to 9,000 subscribers at the moment on my newsletter. I think that makes it one of the biggest newsletters in the NFT space. And, the key here is I think a lot of people are scared to start these other platforms that they're not comfortable with, whether it's a YouTube, a newsletter, a TikTok, whatever it is. They're like, oh, when I get big, maybe I'll do it. The thing is, you need to find your voice when you have a small platform, when you have a small audience, right? My newsletter stunk when I started and I had like 10 subscribers, but I was able to find my voice. And by the time I had 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 subscribers, I was a master at building these newsletters and building this content. So the key is when you have a small audience, you have a small platform, that's your time to experiment. That's your time to try new things. And that's your time to find your voice. You shouldn't wait till you have a platform to do those things.
So I was kind of charmed to read that you grew up with a typewriter, and so my daughter has dyslexia. And so we've been on this journey. She's very young and she's only in second grade. And so like learning the alphabet is something that is very like tactile. And I was thinking about your story and I was like, man, I can just go get a typewriter. That'd be great. And she would love it because she actually set up a little office here in the house that's on a keyboard, but it's not connected to anything. It's just like my old Mac keyboard. So how did your youth and your love of kind of writing evolve over time? And like, what are some of the lessons looking back that, like you said, you're building small, you're finding your voice. Like, what does that mean? And how did your past kind of influence finding your voice now? Like, what are some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe I had an advantage coming into content creation because I've been writing my entire life as a hobby. My career is completely tech focused. It has nothing to do with writing whatsoever. But it's just always been a hobby of mine. And as you said, you did great research. My parents bought me a typewriter when I was a kid, when I was like 5 years old. I'm 32, so it's not like computers didn't exist when I was a kid. They were just cheap. And so they bought me a typewriter. And so I loved it because you type on it and the story goes right on the paper. And then you can take the paper off and staple it and you have a book. Like you can't really do that with computers anymore. Like that, no one has printers. That doesn't exist. And so that's why I really like the typewriters because I instantly had my products that I was creating. And so since then, writing's always just still been my hobby. So I eventually started a sports blog and I was blogging about sports. And then I went into traditional finance and I was blogging and tweeting. So I've been able to hone kind of my craft for a while now. But you still need to find your voice. And when I got into NFTs, I didn't have an NFT voice. I didn't really know what my angle was. But after writing and writing and writing and tweeting and writing blogs and newsletters and this and that, I was able to figure out what worked, what was authentically me, and what I can create. And so, really at the end of the day, you got to be writing. The more you create, the more you produce, the more you'll be able to find your voice. And that's what's really going to be important. And that only comes from repetitions. And those repetitions come from just sitting down, not only getting the repetitions in and like writing, but also being honest with yourself. I had to be honest with myself the first 6 months I was doing this on what was working, what wasn't, where I lacked skills, where I stunk, and where I needed to improve. It's not just repetitions by itself. It's repetitions and honesty with yourself. And that's what caused me to find my voice.
So Twitter is full of trolls. And as you grow and you have more exposure, I'm sure you've come across a couple of them. Does anything stand out in terms of how you first encountered it, and then what you've done to build up either resiliency or like what are your tactics and what's your mindset on when they do come for you, which I think inevitably they come for us all?
This is a tough one for me because I am targeted by trolls. If you're doing anything well, you're going to be targeted by trolls. Just like there's always going to be people who get angry at you if you do something successfully. So it is something to prepare for no matter what, if you're trying to get good at something. The answer, which is more of a do as I say and not as I do answer, is ignore them. Much harder done than said because I fall for it. I fell for it yesterday, actually. I at different points, I'm a technical consultant, but I work with a sales team. So it's very much a lot of verbal jabbing, going back and forth with the people on the team. You know how sales teams can be. And so I'm very much the type of person that enjoys the verbal sparring and the kind of mudslinging. And so when someone came at me on Twitter the other day, I fired back, and like I instantly regret it. Like everything you say and do as you get a platform impacts your brand and is amplified to thousands of people. And this guy came at me and I threw a small jab back, and he freaked out. He tweeted out, "NFT God's a fraud. Can you believe this guy?" And it just wasn't positive for my brand. It didn't impact it at all, but there's like no upside to it. It's only downside. And so my recommendation, I tell myself this every day, I'm gonna break this rule again eventually, just because it's kind of my DNA is to go back and forth with people. But it's best just to ignore them. When you get into it with trolls, the downside's tremendous. The upside is very little. You might win the temporary battle, but you'll lose the war because they brought you down to their level. And so my recommendation would be avoid it and ignore it at all costs, and be confident in yourself, knowing that no matter what other people are saying, you're doing something right because they're coming at you.
100%. Like, it's fascinating to just hear. Look, our emotions get the better of us all the time, right? I think the older I get, the more I realize like the whole game is between my ears and in my head. And so, yeah, I think it's gonna happen. But handling it, I think, is probably the really important part of it, especially when it does kind of get the best of you. I'm trying to work on our POAP real quick, but I had something where it's not necessarily minting currently. I am going to we're going to turn to more of a Q&A. I have a couple more questions queued up, and thank you for pretty much everything that you've shared today. Has been really valuable, and I'm sure the builders that are here just want to continue to hear what's going on. We have some questions, about, or I have questions about that part of the experience you just talked about, where you're pinged, you're up day after day. That's going to happen. You have this discipline. Like, how do you maintain wellness, and what are some things that really you can recommend? So I'm a pretty big health nut. I do this routine as well. I find value in discipline. So we've talked about your routine for writing tweets and how you get on stages, and then how you write your newsletter. Like, how do you then take care of the rest of NFT God? And what are some pieces of advice that you have for the folks that are watching and listening?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked it, because a big part of my content is actually about, self-improvement and wellness. And the reason that is a part of my content is because it's something I had to learn. And as I talked about a little bit earlier, my content strategy is basically learn things and then share it. And so as my platform started growing, I ran into a lot of challenges in the NFT space, just borderline. It's a dopamine factory. A lot of this is gambling disguised as investing when it comes to crypto and NFTs. And what comes along with that is tremendous amount of dopamine hits, withdrawals from dopamine, and just all the unhealthy things that come along with gambling. And so you already have a baseline unhealthy environment. And then now you add on top of that everything that comes along with content creation, whether that's content not performing well, or equally as bad, content performing well. And now you get the ups and downs of the dopamine hits that come from content performing well, right? Like, I sent out a tweet yesterday that's up to 7,000 likes now. And, your phone just goes off the hook for 48 hours straight with comments and likes. And that's just dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And it can be very dangerous if you don't stay balanced. And so, over the last several months, I've tweeted a lot more about wellness, because it's something I've had to learn about and deal with, because, I'm facing all the temptations that come along with Twitter and content creation and having a platform. And so for me, a lot of things that benefit me is one, removal from all of this. When I wake up, I wait at least half an hour before I touch my phone. I can't look at my phone the first 30 minutes because if you look at your phone right away, your brain gets that dopamine hit to start the day. And now it's just going to be chasing it the rest of the day. Now, for the rest of the day, your brain's going to be looking for that next hit. And that's just a really unhealthy state to be in. So that's probably the most critical habit I have, is not looking at my phone the first half hour. In that first half hour, I really enjoy journaling. So this is a really good way for me to get myself in the right mindset to start the day. I sit down, I just free write for half an hour. I write about what I want to accomplish that day, what I'm proud of from the last day, what I'm excited for, what I'm grateful for. And it gets me into a good mindset to start the day. And it gets my creative juices flowing so that when I sit down at my computer or whatever I do, I have ideas going already in my brain for content I can create or things I need to work on. And so those are the big things. My other favorite habit is when I'm done work, I typically go for a walk. It's a little bit more difficult in New York winters, which is what I'm about to experience now. But I find those 20, 25-minute walks late in the day to be extremely meditative. It's actually where most of my best ideas come from, are those walks. So just getting out, going for walks, during the day, clearing your mind, and then just being aware of where and when you're getting dopamine hits and making sure they're not controlling you. And just having that awareness has been critical for me as well. So that's how I'd say, are my big focuses for staying well in this space.
Journaling, meditating, walking while you meditate while you walk, all wonderful insights. So we do have a POAP. I got it to work. UTC time was a bit confusing to me. So for the folks that are watching now, for the next 20 minutes, we have a POAP available. So get out your POAP app. It is a secret word. The secret word is all one lowercase word, God of NFTs. And there's an S on NFTs. God of NFTs, all lowercase. I'm sure Lou will put it in the chat. And then we're going to turn our attention to some of the questions that we've got in the Telegram chat. Some of the questions that have come in are about the newsletter, and specifically timing of a newsletter. So one of the questions is it still a decent time to start a newsletter? And then I would pile on to that and say, how do you prep to launch a newsletter based off of your experiences?
Is it still a good time to launch a newsletter? I would say yes. The reason why I'd say yes is because why not? You have nothing to lose. You only have things to gain, right? You only have the ability to improve your writing skills. If you can write, you can think, right? So if you can start writing well, you're able to crystallize your thoughts better. And so that's an incredibly valuable skill that will impact the rest of your content creation. A big part of content creation is just crystallizing thoughts, being able to take things you have inside you and figuring out the right way to get them out, structure them, make them digestible, make them attractive to people. And for me, long form writing has helped me tremendously with that. So I don't think it's a bad time to write a newsletter. I would say I think a lot of newsletters have started popping up over the last couple of months. With Substack and Review, it's become a lot easier for literally anyone to spin one up. So the market is getting more crowded, but I wouldn't let that stop you because you, again, only have things to gain from starting one. You have nothing to lose. It's free. So just do it. But on that note, I mean, in my mind, there are content avenues that aren't diluted that I'd recommend people try to get into. Like, I still believe the TikTok short form videos are going to be huge in NFTs and Web3. I think they just make sense for Web3. I think that they very easily translate to memes. And I think there's a really good funnel from Twitter to that type of video content. And I don't really think anyone's taking advantage of it yet. I'm just not a video production guy, so it's just not for me. But I do think there are avenues that are less diluted, but I'd still highly recommend starting a newsletter. You're building another platform, you're building your skills, and now you have a list of basically your super fans. And again, it took me 6 months to go from 0 subscribers to like 100 subscribers. So you're not going to get that instant gratification, but you just got to work on it. And then when it comes to launching one and thinking about how to launch one, when I started, like I just wrote about like one story in the NFT space and then I'd send it out. I slowly evolved to like more small bite stories and then evolved to where I am today, which is most of my newsletter isn't even about NFTs. I talk about, kind of what happened in my week and lessons I learned from that week. And then I have a section called 1% Better Every Day where I talk about, something I learned in a book or some sort of concept I think is really important when it comes to life. And then I have my NFT news stories. So timing, days of the week, whatever it is, I do it Thursdays because I don't want to worry about it on the weekends. I want to worry about it midweek. So that's why I do Thursdays. And then I just kind of send it out on Thursday whenever I finish it. So that's how I thought about my newsletter.
A lot to digest there. We have a question from Chris Cantino that follows along the same thread. How do you recognize what you're good at and what people want from you? And do you review your content and try to respond to trends? Or is it more important to follow your intuition and your gut? I added gut.
You got to be honest with yourself. So I do review all my content. I actually have a Google spreadsheet where I put in all my tweets, literally every single tweet. There's thousands of them. End of every day, I copy and paste my 2 tweets and put it into the spreadsheet. A few days later, I fill in the likes, the retweets, the comments. And once a week, I'll have a review session where I'll go back, I'll sort by likes, comments, retweets, and try to find trends. And this is something I was doing earlier in the year, back when I had a much smaller platform, and I'd see what was working and what didn't. My threads where I gave step-by-step guides on how to do something like how to build a program or how to start a newsletter were ones that performed really well. And so I reviewed all my content. I was honest to myself about what did and didn't work, what formats of tweets and content did and didn't work. And then I cut the fat. And, I always stayed authentic to myself. I never chased trends unless the trend kind of fits into what I'm doing, right? So if I see something that's working that fits into my voice, I might try to find the middle ground there. But so far, that's been next to nothing in the NFT space. None of the really trends have really attracted me. So it's about honest reflection. I do review my content so that I can be honest with myself and understand what is and isn't working. I'm not chasing trends if they're not authentic to me or in my voice, because I do believe everyone has the innate ability to determine when someone's being authentic or not. If I were to send out a meme post, I've never sent out a single meme in my life. If I was to send out a meme, I just feel like people would know it's not authentic. They would just feel it subconsciously. I'd say examine trends in the way where you take out the lessons learned from them, but don't do anything that's not authentic to yourself. And I appreciate that question, Cantino.
Rock on. Authenticity feels like in the age of bots and I guess engagement farming, it's really a premium. It's something that is probably undervalued at this point. At least I feel that way.
There are, when you go on Twitter, there's unfortunately a lot of, in the Web3 space, there's a playbook people follow that's really easy to follow, that does get you engagement, that does get you followers. And a lot of people are doing it, and it's not really authentic to anyone. And it's kind of that kind of low touch, low intellect playbook that a lot of people do. It's building them audiences. It's not building them high value audiences. And so there's going to be easy ways out. There's going to be magic wands you can do. My recommendation would be avoid those easy way outs because they're just not going to build you anything of quality.
Yeah. A million of zero is still zero.
Yes.
So Lou had a good question. And I think it's more along the line of how Web3 and newsletters are going to intersect. And so what are the trends you're seeing for Web3 becoming more intersectional with newsletters, and what's the best resource you've found to express that? Like you're using Substack, and Substack just got podcasts. Like I think maybe a Web3 wallet integration might be a little further away. So what are you seeing and using, and what are you excited about?
I mean, I love Substack. I've tried many different platforms. I tried Constant Contact. That was my first platform. I got canceled on Constant Contact. Apparently, they don't allow you to talk about crypto or NFTs. So they kicked me off their platform. Then I went to Review, which is the Twitter newsletter. I just didn't like the feel of it. I didn't like the way my newsletters looked. I didn't like the customization options. It just didn't feel right to me. So I moved from there to Substack, and I started Substack probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and I love it. I think it's really cool. I think there's very interesting discoverability on it. You write a newsletter on any other platform, there's zero discoverability. People aren't going to find your newsletter unless they sign up for it. Substack has discoverability where I'm getting subscribers because the algorithm on Substack brought them to me, which I think is really powerful. So I do think I love writing the newsletter, but I do think there's intersections between newsletters and Web3. I don't think Web3 is just NFTs. If every NFT went to zero, I still believe everyone you see on Twitter today in Web3 would still be doing the same thing. All the same spaces would be going on, all the same tweets, all the same memes. So there's something a lot more to Web3 than just NFTs. If you remove NFTs from the equation, Web3 still exists, and the same people will be there. And so, for me, my content strategy has not just been tweeting and creating content around NFTs. It's been finding the intersection of NFTs, self-improvement, technology, wellness, health, and how all of those combine. And so for me, the newsletter is my platform to really dive into those topics. And I believe, there's other intersections between Web3 and other topics that people can explore. And a newsletter is a great way to do that because it's long form writing. And I don't believe there's any other better form of long form writing tools right now than newsletters because it goes directly to the inbox. So I believe newsletters are a powerful form of, communication when it comes to Web3 to explore those other intersections of topics that I think are really interesting other than just NFTs.
A lot of thoughts there. And it dovetails with actually Janet's question that's coming. So the evolution of your voice over the past few months, being authentic, finding each of the different topics that you really both invest in but want to share and do research in. What's been the difference on Twitter for you having, and maybe there isn't a difference, but what's the difference between having the 500 followers to the 5,000 followers to the 50,000 followers? And how do you think about 100,000 followers, or do you?
Yeah, I'd say what's gotten me from 0 to 50,000, kind of the evolution for me was, not only finding my voice, but also finding my writing style. Twitter is a writing platform and you are limited to 280 characters. And I think it's much harder to write a powerful idea in 280 characters than it is to write a powerful idea in 1 million characters. Communicating an idea effectively with punchiness and readability is much harder in a tweet than in a newsletter. And so, over the last 10 months, I've been able to figure out, for me, the best way to put ideas into tweets. And I've found my writing style. I found what works. I found the words to use that get people to interact and read and be interested in my ideas. And so I think that's what brought me to this point, is me just improving my writing. Writing, you can have a really crap idea, but write it really well and it'll take off. And you can have a really strong idea and write it poorly and no one will care. And so for me, my content from month 0 to 6 were awful. They weren't good. Yeah, I had the same ideas I'm giving now. I just didn't have my voice and I didn't have my writing style. Now I have those styles and that voice. And then now going from 50K to 100K, I'm trying to kind of expand my niche. I had a really focused niche at 0 followers. I expanded that niche at 1,000. I expanded at 10K. And now I'm at where I'm at now. If you go through my content, I'd say somewhere between 10 to 20% is about NFTs. Actually, I'd say about 80% is about, self-help, improvement, health, wellness, habits, the markets, financial, technology, programming. And so I'm trying to expand past just NFTs, because at the end of the day, the NFT market isn't expanding right now. We're in a bear market. People are scared. Who's in it now is going to be in it for a little while. And so I'm trying to capture other audiences. So now that I've hit 50K, I'm looking about, okay, how can I expand my niche even further to capture more audiences? And so that's my strategy moving forward. But under 50K, very much under 10K, it's just about finding your voice, finding your writing style, and mastering a niche.
Yeah, just keep re-emphasizing, find that style and find that niche. And would it be safe to say that you're going to have to go through this pain period and experiment a lot in that time period and just keep going and you'll eventually get there? What did you have an aha moment, or was it really data based over time?
I didn't have an aha moment. I mean, I definitely had a tipping point. Mid-June, I sent out a thread. I just think I think I broke down one of my trades step by step, and it went viral. And I went from 5,000 followers to 15,000 overnight. And that was my tipping point. And then from that point forward, everything I wrote got attention. But it's been just total data focus, looking at my content, looking at what's working. I saw that thread worked really well because it was giving value, giving information. I'm like, okay, now I'm going to lean into this super hard. And I still experiment here and there. I wrote a humorous tweet a couple weeks ago and it didn't perform too well. And so I'm like, all right, maybe I'm not as funny as I think I am. And I stopped doing that. But it's all about data.
That all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So, no more trying to be funny on Twitter. And so it's just data. I'm still reviewing all my tweets. I still have my spreadsheet. I look at the numbers on which ones of my newsletters perform well. And so there was no aha moment. The key to this is you're going to need to withstand a tremendous amount of pain before you make it. You're going to need to write content that gets viewed by 0 people over and over and over and over and over again. And it could be fire content and no one will read it and no one will like it. And it doesn't matter because that's just the way it works. And you got to be able to fall in love with the journey rather than the destination. And for me, I fell in love with reviewing my content, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, trying new styles, trying new formats. And so it didn't really affect me that, I'd spend 2 hours on a thread and I got 4 likes. It didn't matter. I found new ways to improve and I love that journey. And so, it really is about the process. I get a ton of DMs from people saying, hey, I just wrote this thread. Why did I only get 1 like? This doesn't make sense. Well, you just wrote 1 thread. You got to write 1,000. And so it's falling in love with the journey, not the destination.
Fall in love with that journey for sure. We got another question here. We're coming up close on the end. I do want to give you the final word, or near the final word. And this one comes from NFT Hugh. And what do you think about the new quote unquote application meta in NFT projects like Valhalla or KPR and Dark Labs, which is effectively selecting allow list people based on an application process. Any impressions or hot takes there?
Yeah, I actually do like it. I like the idea of curated communities. You know, it's tough to generalize the entire application process and say it's all good, because I'm sure there's going to be bad actors out there that use that paradigm the wrong way. And so I don't want to say every project that uses it is doing it right and is a great thing. But I do like the idea of curated communities. I do like the idea of just curation overall. I think that's one of the benefits of NFTs. So, you know, I enjoy anyone doing it different. And previously, the meta was whitelist grinding on Discord. And that, I think everyone can agree, objectively stinks. So this is an evolution of that. I don't think this is the end of the road. I don't think in, 10 years we're going to be doing applications to get NFTs. But this is the next step forward of, okay, how do we evolve from just pure chaos of whitelist grinding to something a little bit more, thought required? And so I don't mind it. It's another step forward. I'm honestly not here filling out applications for NFTs. I don't care that much, but I do like the idea that we're just moving forward from what we did before, trying new things, experimenting, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And, 6 months from now, there might be a new meta that came from the fact that applications did or didn't work. So I'm always a fan of change and experimentation.
Fantastic. I don't have a strong opinion on them either way. I mean, I think we're at this early stage where we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And so it's kind of a great departure from the Discord grinding to kind of just fill out your application and throw it in. I personally also benefited from a personal application put in CPG. So I feel like maybe we started that trend a while ago, although it was for a much smaller giveaway. So we are at the top of the hour. Alex, NFT God, thank you so much. It has been really insightful to hear you talk about how you're putting out your tweets. Because, I mean, for the audience that's listening and watching, like, this is all out on Twitter. He has not said many things that you couldn't find necessarily. Well, there's some things, but most of this great content you can go read. So I encourage you to go subscribe and follow. Well, I have. I've benefited from it. I think the piece that I really want to just underline before you give your final word is this disciplined approach with an authentic tone, because I think that distills the sum of it. Is like you would have said it over and over again. Like, my first few tweets were garbage, but I kept going. And I feel like that's the real piece of this, is like, just keep going. So with that, I'll give you the final word, and then we're going to close this out. And again, thank you for coming on. For the builders out here, I'm confident they're going to get something out of this that's going to help them make their Web3 experience better, and then subsequently make all of our Web3 experience better. So take it away.
Yeah, I love the CPG project because it is for builders, and the people building right now are going to have all the leverage when the next bull market comes around. The people building content, the people building the tools, the platforms, they're going to be the ones that have all the leverage next time the money comes around into the market. So no matter what you're doing, keep building it. Be honest with yourself on what is and isn't working. If you need to pivot, admit failure and pivot, and just fall in love with the journey. And, just know that what you're doing, there's very little downside, but tremendous upside, and do it all in a very authentic way. Because that's really the only way to succeed, is being your authentic self. So appreciate everyone who watched, appreciate the questions. And I really hope that was helpful.
Well, with that, we're going to end. Thank you again, NFT God. Thank you again, Alex. We will be back again next week. This podcast will drop a week from now, so be on the lookout. Please subscribe to Crypto Podcast Goods wherever you find your podcast, and be on the lookout in the Telegrams for the live stream replay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much.